Showdown between the 49ers and the Rams coming up here at Levi's Stadium. San Francisco practicing right now. Some good news on the injury front. Bryce Huff back out on that field. I think they're going to need him badly against Matthew Stafford and company. Also returning for the 49ers to practice from a hamstring injury, Jake Brendel, the center. So he may retake over for Matt Hennessy. Big question on people's minds, the status of Brock Purdy. He was back out at practice in a limited capacity today. We're talking about Purdy and natural grass now after 2 weeks on artificial turf. So I think that there is a significantly better chance that he retakes the field for the 49ers, at least as an active player, at least as QB2. Here's what Kyle Shanahan had to say about first-team reps.
Do you see yourself giving Brock more first-team reps this week?
Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah, we plan on pushing it each week.
Now, this is what I'll have to add about Brock Purdy. There should be little concern about him hopping into a situation cold turkey and delivering. He's done that successfully twice already in his 49ers career. 2022, his first actual action against the Miami Dolphins. That was a cold turkey insertion into the game. And then 2023, coming off of elbow surgery, Brock Purdy with limited training camp time, limited preseason time, delivered for the 49ers in week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Speaking of confidence in Purdy and the flow of the offense, here's a little bit more from Kyle Shanahan.
Everyone knows that Brock can play at a high level. When Brock is healthy and he's himself, we know he'll play at a high level. So as long as you have a quarterback playing at a high level, don't worry too much about the chemistry.
Now this is going to be a major test for the 49ers. The Rams, they, along with the Seahawks, are the only 2 teams in the NFL with a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. That defense has not given up a 3rd and 12 plus yet this season, and they are number 1 in the league on 2nd and long. And they're good at getting you into 2nd and 3rd and long because of how good they are in the run defense part of this game, and obviously the pass rush is what fuels those 2nd and 3rd and longs for the defense success-wise. Jared Verse coming in, Braden Fisk. I mean, they've got a lot of good defensive linemen. It was amazing how the 49ers were able to beat the Rams back in week 5. We saw a lot of short passing from Mac Jones. It was the old Jimmy Garoppolo game plan. And regardless of who plays quarterback in this game, Jones or Purdy, I think the ball is going to have to come out quickly against the Rams. Also for San Francisco, I mentioned Jake Brendel, the center, might be returning this week. He is back out at practice. Ben Bartch is now a full participant coming off the high ankle sprain. His practice window opened last week. He was limited last week, was not activated. Spencer Burford was activated. Burford, I thought, was good for the 49ers against the New York Giants, but there's a good chance that Ben Bartch is back in that left guard spot, which would allow Burford to become the roving 6th man for this offensive line, which is valuable in and of itself. Another little piece of good news is that Yetur Gross-Matos, Shanahan said that he will be back at some point this season. They are not counting on this hamstring re-aggravation to be a season ender for Gross-Matos. And the reason that I bring that up is if Yetur can come back, the 49ers might have up to 4 plus pass rushers on this roster. And you know, I get that a lot of this is theoretical speak. I get that they would have to avoid injuries to get to this point, but all you can do is work with the materials that you have in your building. And they've added Keon White a week ahead of the trade deadline. Bryce Huff has returned to practice for the 49ers. Yetur Gross-Matos was the top win rate out of any interior rusher over weeks 1 to 5. And Sam Okawanu is rushing well for San Francisco. 2 of the last 3 games, he's had 5 pressures apiece in those games. That's what we call light at the end of the tunnel for this 49ers pass rush, which has obviously struggled following not just the loss of Nick Bosa, but also the loss of Bryce Huff for 2 games, and of course, Yetur Gross-Matos. So that was just a little tidbit from Kyle Shanahan today. That's something to look forward to a little bit further down the road. The last time I was on the football field with my Cayman Tacovas. Today, it's the new ostrich ones. These aren't limited to outdoor use. I could also wear them while I'm covering a football game, up in the press box, walking down to the locker room, or heading to the field. Authentic Western style. Timeless, premium quality. They're all handcrafted. Tacovas are all about the West, and here we are in the capital of the West, right at the Golden Gate. Another perfect spot for the Tacovas ostrich boots that really melds to your foot. It's a nice feeling as you break in these boots, and you can feel the handcrafted quality every single time you put them on. So for a limited time, you can see the QR code up on the screen. You can get some Tacovas if you scan that code. Kyle did talk about the trade deadline today, and you know, I know that I've already hit on this hard. We talked about it on the morning live today, and we've talked about it on Tuesday's video, the article up on the San Francisco Standard. Here is Kyle Shanahan's explanation for why the 49ers were not able to make any pre-deadline moves.
Yeah, I don't think it has to do with how we view this year's team. I think we worked just as hard this year to make a trade that made sense for our team this year and next year, just as hard as we do every year. I mean, there's a lot of teams with records like 6-3 or better that didn't make any big trade. They're not just because you make a big trade doesn't mean it's always a smart move. There's a lot of risk that goes into it, not just for this year, but throughout your whole future. I was excited we were able to make it one that we felt real good about last week and getting Keon. I know we looked into a ton of them, but the asking price was too much on all the ones.
So you heard Kyle Shanahan say that the 49ers made a ton of inquiries about trades, and the only one that really panned out, given the cost structure and the realities of the situation, was the one for Keon White. Of course, they made 3 trades before that, including one for Bryce Huff, which I think is interesting. You know, the price for Huff, either a 4th or a 5th round pick, depending on whether or not he reaches 8 sacks, that was exactly what the 49ers had in mind for somebody like Jermaine Johnson. They wanted to pay a 4 to the New York Jets, but the Jets wanted a 2nd round pick, and that was out of the 49ers price range. And as Shanahan said, that not reflective of where the 49ers are as a team. They're 6-3, they're contending, they're frustrated that this defense has lost so much via injury, but the 49ers are operating within a very interesting window of circumstances, one of which is that this is the first year of a 3-year competitive window for the team, and they ran an entire youth movement roster renovation over the course of this offseason, so the way that they acted at the trade deadline was very congruent with how free agency went and the draft went. And you know what's doubly funny is that the 49ers emulated what the Rams did a couple years ago throughout the course of this offseason. They used that Rams formula, and now they're playing the Rams again on Sunday after beating them in that crazy game week 5. I just had a chance to look at my article up on the San Francisco Standard from back in the offseason about how the 49ers are emulating the Rams model. It has aged very well. I talked about the 4 49ers pillars of necessary improvement. We've seen necessary improvement across those 4 pillars. Despite the fact that they've gotten a lot younger, they have been able to improve things like special teams, all the way up to number 2 in the league since week 2. They were the worst special teams unit in the league last year, number 2 this season. Average separation has gone up from number 32 to number 24. I mean, that's one where the 49ers still don't have their receivers. By the way, Ricky Pearsall didn't practice today. We'll see a little bit more on Ricky Pearsall over the course of this week. That's taken longer than the 49ers expected. Brandon Aiyuk not back out at practice for the 49ers yet either, so I think that's hurting the separation metrics, but they've been running in short yardage better than last year. They're ranked around the middle of the pack in that regard, and the run defense for the 49ers has improved from number 29 to number 6. So the roster construction method that the 49ers have used, the youth infusion, the cost efficiency reset to make themselves cap solvent into the future, it's generated some impressive results. It's one of the reasons why, several of the reasons why this team is 6-3 right now. But you know what? They are underdogs against the Rams. And what I found funny is that the 49ers since week 2, when special teams caught fire following the signing of Eddie Pinheiro, special teams has added 28.5 expected points. That comes out to about 3.6 points added, expected points added per game since the change from Jake Moody to Eddie Pinheiro. The 49ers are 3.5 point underdogs against the Rams. 3.6, greater than 3.5. Maybe special teams. The 49ers' number 2 special teams unit is going to be the difference for them in this 2025 rematch against the Rams. Wouldn't that be something?
Pearsall, what's his status right now?
Just the same as what I said last week. No setback, just taking longer to heal than we thought.
As far as Brandon Aiyuk, are you confident that he's going to play this year, or is there a possibility that he doesn't ever get that window open and doesn't play?
I would think. I'm pretty confident that he's going to eventually. At least open up his practice window. We talk about it being week to week right now, so still wait until he's ready.
Is it a matter of him hitting these marks? The GPS stuff, the speed stuff, those types of things, very technical things at this point.
Yes.
We appreciate you sticking with us and glad to finally get you on because it's always good talking to you. How's it going today?
I'm good. I'm back in the facility, ready to see what Brock Purdy's status is. They're going to have practice here in a little bit. Big week for the 49ers. Rams coming back in. Feels like yesterday we were just down at SoFi for that game that the 49ers didn't have anybody really available. They were able to still win. So I actually think they're going to have more guys available relative to last time. But the Rams are playing really good football. So it's going to be a fun week to see where the 49ers are.
Man, that was October the 2nd. What a wild game. Able to win in overtime. And now on November the 9th, there's going to be a huge game on who's going to win the West, and Seattle's there as well. So I do want to get your thoughts on Brock, because I know you've been interestingly optimistic that he could return as early as this game. But I do want to start with yesterday and the fact that, and the Niners did trade for Keon White the week before, and they've made other acquisitions, certainly, both running back, wide receiver, and getting Bryce Huff in the offseason. But yesterday, they did not make a trade. You texted me early in the morning about Bradley Chubb, and there may have been some rumblings there, and Dallas was involved, and Dallas had a big day, and then Jermaine Johnson later in the day, and Trey Hendrickson's name was out there. Ultimately, David, do the 49ers come remotely close to making a trade? What happened with the Bradley Chubb, because he was not traded, and likewise Jermaine Johnson later in the day, David?
I think the closest was Jermaine Johnson. I think the 49ers were willing to send a 4, but the Jets wanted a 2. If you look at the Bryce Huff price, it was a 4 or 5, right? If he gets to 8 sacks, it's going to be a 4th-round pick heading to Philadelphia. The Jermaine Johnson situation is not identical, but it is a player with one more season beyond this under contract. It is a defensive end edge rusher. It's somebody who has had success in the past. Now, Jermaine's actually coming off of an Achilles injury, so this is his first season back after he tore it last year. He's a Pro Bowler in 2023. But I think that just from the point of view of spending capability, the 49ers are trying to stay salary cap solvent. We've known that they've gone to the youth movement for this team. We've known that barring a very, very special exception that they were going to want a player under contract beyond 2025 for this trade market. I think that the price that the 49ers had in mind was no higher than a day 3 pick. And obviously round 4 is the start of day 3. So that's as high as they would have gone for somebody like Jermaine Johnson, and the Jets wanted that 2nd-round pick. I do think that the craziness of the market, especially as it pertained to the Jets and their fire sale, they're able to get 2 1s for Sauce Gardner, who played his best football years ago, early in his career. They're able to get a 1 and a 2 for Quinnen Williams, who has only 1 sack this year. I still think that Quinnen is a fine player, but I think that the consensus there is that Dallas severely overpaid. I think that the Jets were not going to take less than a 2nd-round pick for Jermaine Johnson. They had seen such great success with the first 2 parts of that fire sale that they refused to budge off of their initial price. I think the same thing probably happened in Miami with Bradley Chubb. And if you look at Cincinnati, they held firm to that 1st-round price for Trey Hendrickson, which I think is preposterous. I think that's not good business for Cincinnati, because I think he's likely going to walk anyway after this year. That's a historically bad defense that the Bengals have right now. I think if they had their wits about them, then they would have moved Trey Hendrickson for less than a 1st-round pick, so they get at least some sort of profit off of that situation.
So just to clarify on that, David, as far as not just for the 49ers, but any other team out there, it sounds like there was never really any smoke around the Trey Hendrickson situation because the Bengals weren't really willing to lower their asking price to something beyond just a first-round pick.
Yeah, all I heard was that the Bengals wanted a one, and they weren't budging off of that. Now, they're Mike Brown, notoriously stubborn. The Bengals they don't like trading players in season.
Yeah.
Maybe they reluctantly said, okay, fine, we'll put him out there for a one just to see if anybody would be a sucker and bite. But the guy's been limited or out with the hip injury, and that defense in and of itself has just been toxic this year in Cincinnati. They've given up like 600-plus yards after missed tackles or something wild out there. So, there's great respect for Trey Hendrickson, though, in the 49ers locker room. Those guys would have welcomed him with open arms, but at a price of a first-round pick for a half-season rental, that was a complete non-starter.
Yeah, but the one thing, and we looked into this because we didn't know, I thought that Cincinnati had given him in his contract, and he obviously can be traded. We know that, but he also can be franchise tagged. So maybe they just tag him in the offseason and they trade him. And I thought the Niners, maybe you give up the one now. You don't really want to do that, but you don't have to. You're not going to draft till April. If you played that game where you traded for him, or even Mike Brown, Duke Tobin in Cincinnati, put him on the market, what do you think you can trade Trey Hendrickson for right before the start of the new league year? If Micah Parsons got a couple of ones, Trey Hendrickson did lead the league in sacks the last couple of years, David. If you traded him in March, could you not get more than a first-round pick for him, or no?
I think that it would depend on how he finishes this season. The stock definitely is not going up right now with the injury issues that he's had. He's also on the wrong side of 30 now. And again, he's playing on a horrific Cincinnati defense, which probably isn't helping his case. But he has led the league in sacks, you're right, over the past 2 seasons. I can just tell you from talking to some of the guys in the 49ers locker room, they love the way that he plays, love the way that he defends the run. That's one thing that, differentiates players. And that's one thing the 49ers defense has been able to do well this year. They've improved their run defense all the way up to the top 10. They're one of the worst in the league last year. So for that reason, he would have fit. I don't know what the price on Hendrickson would be in that situation, because I think we have to let the rest of the season play out and see which way he's trending as a player, because the production has definitely been down this year versus the last 2.
David Lombardi of the SF Standard, the voice you hear on the UMA guest line. So when we look at big moments from last week, we did Papa's playbook about an hour ago, and the first play we pulled up was the decision to go for it on 4th and 1 on the 49ers' first drive at their own 41-yard line. Now, football has changed. Teams are going for it on 4th down a lot more, and Kyle Shanahan still falls on the more conservative side of the spectrum when it comes to 4th down decisions. But what I want to ask you, because I did have this thought in real time, do you think that decision said anything about what Kyle Shanahan thinks of his depleted defense coming off the heels of the Houston game, looking at the way the Giants drove it down the field on their first possession, or would that just be reading a little bit too much into the situation?
Well, I might have actually read further into it. I don't know if you were following me on Twitter during the thing, but the 49ers actually sent out the punt unit first. And I was highly critical of that. They had to burn a timeout because I thought that was the most no-brainer, go-for-it situation that there was, because I had watched that defense in Houston. I then watched that defense over the first drive from the Giants, and they just got shredded down the field. And I also knew that the Giants had a very poor defense, and that the 49ers' path to winning this game would be ball control. So a 4th and 1, to me, that was a no-brainer, go for it. And what I thought when Kyle Shanahan initially ran out the punt team was he believes a little too much in this 49ers defense. And then I thought that somebody had talked sense into him and they called timeout. Kyle explained it that he just, and this is totally plausible, he just figured that they were further back from the line to go. He thought it was 4th and 2 instead of 4th and 1. And on the chaos of the sideline, that, if you've ever been down on a football sideline, that can happen sometimes, and I think that's what happened there, because as soon as Kyle figured out that it was actually 4th and 1, all the factors that I just said, I think that he agreed that it was a no-brainer, go-for-it decision.
Yeah, man. I mean, you are on your own 41-yard line. 6 minutes is gone in the game. You just started. If you don't pick it up, and you did false start on the play, you could have punted on 4th and 6. But just the point I was making is that, and Kyle still, the Niners have only gone for it on 4th down, David, 12 times this year. They've converted 7. I saw a note where Andy Reid going into the Buffalo game has gone for it 22 times on 4th down. And Andy had a lot of the same conservative, lack of game management rap when he was in Philadelphia, either losing championship games or winning one and losing a Super Bowl to Belichick. But my question is just the analytics, so you're so good breaking it all down. There's a lot of changes in football. The 60-yard field goal with the K-ball is just incredible now. We're going to have 68, 69, 70. Do I hear 72? They're just bombing 60-yard field goals like they're 50-yard field goals. But going forward on 4th down with Howie Roseman in Philly and Doug Peterson, they started it. And now the tush push, where it's never 1st and 10 for them. It's always 1st and 8 or 1st and 8.5 because they're just going to go forward on 4th down. Just your thoughts on what 4th down has become on offensive football and the way Kyle Shanahan has embraced it some, but still you would say overall is on the conservative side.
Yeah, so it's interesting that they have all these charts now that put these coaches on an XY graph to show where they are. And Kyle, up until this year, had always been on the more conservative side. This year, I've seen a couple of them. I haven't studied them all too closely this year, but it has landed a couple times on the more aggressive side. As far as the 4th and 1 from the game the other day, I look at the 49ers this year, and George Kittle talked about it in the post-game press conference. This is a team as currently set up with the injuries to Bosa and Warner, and now to Michael Williams, with some talent hopefully returning offensively soon. This is a team whose offense has to protect the defense. Like, you have to hog the ball if you're the 49ers. That's the formula for this team. You can't expose the defense. And like, as you said, the defense was already on the field for 6 minutes. I think Kyle Shanahan was dreading sending him back out there for 5 more. That'd be a recreation of the start of the Houston game where Houston had almost all of the possession in the first half. So I think that a lot of Kyle Shanahan's aggressiveness this year on 4th down is a byproduct of that reality, right? The 49ers defense needs to be shielded by its offense just because of sheer personnel losses. And the 49ers have their analytics guys. I can tell you that 4th and 1, the analytics said, I looked at the numbers, they increased their win probability by about 4% by going for it. So analytically, it was a sound call. I thought that it was more of a no-brainer than that, just given my gut feeling. Kyle will always talk about he gets the analytics, but then he also recognizes the importance of the gut feeling, because the analytics are based on doing that play 1,000 times, but in an actual game, there's only one rep, right? That it's one or done in that situation. So he feels he needs to balance both things, and this year he's definitely trended toward the more aggressive side.
A few more minutes here with David Lombardi, and while we talk about the offense protecting the defense, that leads me to ask you, was Sunday a turning point for Brian Robinson Jr.? Now, as we noted, the New York Giants do not have a good rushing defense at all, and you're going to face a Rams team that is much better in that department and just defense as a whole. But Brian Robinson Jr. comes over in a trade, and I'm not saying, Christian McCaffrey's not going to play important snaps, because we know that that's not going to be the case. But it is fair to note McCaffrey has gotten a lot of touches, far more than the next highest player, which is Jonathan Taylor. So Brian Robinson Jr., if he's able to be a little bit of a tackle breaker, pick up yards up the middle, maybe a short yardage kind of back, do you see Sunday as a potential turning point?
Well, that kick return in Houston opened my eyes, because the 49ers, I can't think of many other good plays they had in the first half. That might have been the only plus play on either side of the ball in the first half. And it's been 2 straight weeks with a plus kick return. I know last week they're all yelling at him to take the touchback, and then he ran it out. So it was one of those no, yes things. But the guy's got juice, and I think that underscores a bigger thing entering this game, is that the Rams are really good. They and the Seahawks are the only two NFL teams who are top 5 offense and defense in efficiency. But unlike the Seahawks, who are the top special teams in the league, the Rams have a bad special teams unit. And you know what? The 49ers, after week 1, after they cut Jake Moody, have the number 3 special teams efficiency in the entire NFL.
Wow.
A huge part of it is Eddie Pinheiro, but Brian Robinson's returns definitely are not hurting that score. And even if he doesn't get a whole lot of carries, he didn't have that many against the Giants. I know he maximized them, but even if that's not part of his game, he can help the 49ers on those kick returns. And I think if they're going to find a way to upset the Rams on Sunday, special teams is that one edge that they do have on paper.
Well, they did score a season high, with the 34 points in New York. The Giants' defense is not nearly as good as the LA Rams, so we'll see. So you are at Levi's in about 40 minutes or so. Kyle's going to enter the room and go through the laundry list of who's going to practice and who's not. And Christian McCaffrey and Trent will always have their Wednesday vet days. We'll listen for Ricky, obviously. But the big one is Brock, and we expect the word limited to be used, but limited is a very vague term for an NFL practice. A limited could mean no reps at all. Limited could mean you get all the reps. But I do want to ask you, because what Kyle said after the game was over in Jersey about Brock Purdy, and it's a different Kyle when he meets the media on Wednesday at 12:40, 12:50 versus after a game is over. He's got a beer in his hand and he's got a list of injuries and he's looking at it and he feels differently when they win. But when he said, David, very honestly, and it's something we've all known, but he flat out said it, anytime you're dealing with turf toe, it's probably something that won't fully go away all year. Regardless of when he comes back, he's always going to have to deal with it. It's really about assessing when the best time to come back that'll have they'd have to deal with it the least. So I know you've been pointing to, and you've mentioned to me in our personal communication, and you've said it on the air, and you've written it a little bit. You still think that Brock Purdy may, in fact, quarterback the team this Sunday against the LA Rams? What is that based on versus what Kyle said rather honestly? And then when they asked him, was he ever really going to be the backup quarterback in this game? He said he was not close to being the backup quarterback last week. So how do we expect him to be the starting quarterback this week?
Well, I think that the thing that nobody has said or has acknowledged, and the 49ers, that they were asked about it a couple times, but they didn't want to draw attention to it, was the artificial turf. I think that there was no way they were ever going to bring Brock Purdy back into a game on artificial turf, especially at MetLife Stadium. And the past 2 games have been at Houston and at New York. But I think that the fact that they're out there acknowledging that this is turf toe, that this is probably never going to be 100% over the course of this season, but they're just waiting for the right spot. That means that the right spot probably is near. And I can't think of a better spot than a game against a Rams team on natural grass. A lot of people asked me in response to my stance on this that, doesn't Brock Purdy need a little bit of a warm-up? How can you just throw him to the Wolves against the Rams, who are one of the better defenses in the league? And, to that I would say, there are no warm-ups in the NFL. Even if you're out there against the New York Giants, even if it were on natural grass last week, then you'd have Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns and all those guys coming after you. So it's not like there is a gimme for an NFL quarterback facing a pass rush. And B, remember the history of Brock Purdy. This is a cold turkey quarterback. In 2022, he came off the bench cold and delivered against the Miami Dolphins, and then the next week against the Buccaneers. We all know that story. And then in 2023, he didn't have preseason action, and he showed up and delivered against the Pittsburgh Steelers after rehabbing his elbow all off season. So I think for Brock Purdy, this is something he's done before. Like he's been able to go from being inactive to playing. It's a question now of how healthy is he. Based on what I've seen at practice, he's had more zip and he's been moving well now than he did a few weeks ago. So obviously the progression is happening. The question now is about timing for the 49ers.
It's all eyes on Bryce Huff. It's all eyes on Ricky Pearsall. It's all eyes on Brock Purdy and Mac Jones as we continue to get back into this week and get ready for Rams week. David, Appreciate you coming by with us. I know you're getting back into it today as well. Kyle Shanahan's going to speak in about a half an hour or so, or, we always say 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how fashionably late he decides to be. But I know you'll be out there regardless, and always grateful when you can join us.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Great talking to you.